The church is one of the last places most want to talk about sex. So most people will look elsewhere for advice on sex before looking to see what God has to say about it. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about sex.
Welcome to a wonderful episode of The Big E, the Elephant in the Room. My name is Melissa. Today we are actually going to be talking about a very taboo topic that a lot of people don't always feel comfortable to talk about. We're going to be talking about sex. Yes, the elephant in the room, we're diving into this topic. So I want everyone to put your seatbelts on and we're just going to dive into this topic. So to help me have this wonderful discussion, we have a wonderful couple. They are part of Fire and Ice, actually the founder of Fire and Ice Couples Therapy, Dr. Kia Fisher and Wagner Fisher. So thank you so much for being part of this wonderful episode and this great topic.
Thank you for having us.
Definitely.
Yes.
So we're going to just go into this because I know everybody is just ready for this topic. So let's just get a little bit background about you, Dr. Fisher. If you can just go in about your background and your experience that you have about talking about sex.
Well, I am a psychotherapist, behavioral health, and so it's nothing new that we keep silent. You know what I'm saying? It's something that is very difficult to talk about in regards to trauma, in regards to people who just don't know how to talk to their kids. So I'm there to help parents. I'm there to help children, youth, to talk about this topic on many occasions when it comes to certain sessions that I have with clients. As far as my personal experience, I'm from the Caribbean. So when it comes to sex, we don't talk about it. I cannot remember a time where my mom sat me down and said, hey, let's talk about the birds and the bees, or let's talk about sex in any way, shape, or form. I had to learn on my own. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't wish that on anyone because mistakes happen when you learn on your own. Addictions happen when you learn on your own. So that's my experience in regards to sex and not really learning about it, but learning on my own about it.
Okay.
That besides the whole sex education in school. Okay. You want to call it that. What about you, babe?
True. Well, for me, I would say is one of the things that I've seen even in men's ministry groups. You hear a lot about, be part of this men's ministry group in the church. And then when you go, a lot of the conversation is very vague. You know what I mean? It's very general. And when men are asking or wanting detail, it's kind of dismissed, or a lot of people don't want to talk about it. And then you tend to wonder why. You know what I mean? The whole concept is one of the things that I've realized is that you don't hear much preaching or speaking about Songs of Solomon. You know what I mean? You hear about other things discussed, you know what I mean, on the pulpit. You hear about family, but you don't hear the details of the Songs of Solomon, you know what I mean, about sex. Mm-hmm. And what we fail to realize and understand is that kids do tend to wonder, how did I get here? You get what I'm saying? But then not only that, a lot of times we wonder, where do our children get certain information from? Mm-hmm. But then you have to ask yourself, if they're not getting it from the church, then they're gonna find other place, because inquiring minds wants to know. And because kids are so inquisitive and wondering and trying to figure things out, they are going to research. And now that we're living in a social media world, the access is just, you know what I mean, it's just beyond. Not like how it was back in the days. You have to go to the library. You have to have encyclopedia.
Or learn from your friend that didn't know nothing either.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You feel to yourself that you can go to the church, because the church is a place of refuge where you can get the truth information that is not false, that the world will give you.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this topic about sex is due to just generational, let's just not talk about this conversation because it's between couples and it's making a decision between what the couples feel, or, what their intimacy, their private intimacy moment? Is this the reason why the church, or just in general, we just don't feel that comfortable to talk about it?
It's a cultural thing, in my opinion, in regards to my background. It is left to the couple, but as grown Kia, who's a therapist, when clients come to me, couples come to me, I see that there's a discord, because either the man knows too much and the woman don't know nothing, don't know how to please, or the man may have been sheltered and the woman probably, have been out there. It's always some kind of discord. But the culture in regards to growing up, it was something that was left unsaid because they felt like that's grown people business. But when you become grown people, who do you go to? So that's the discord in regards to culture, sex, and even the church, because the church holds a lot of, especially the church that I grew up in, it was a cultural church, because we went to the Adventist church, basically, that had more Caribbean people. So on top of that was, culture and religion. The two didn't mix and didn't give anything that we needed, basically, in regards to sex.
So I'm going to read something that I read doing some research about why churches don't feel comfortable about sex. I read something and it said a lot of times churches don't feel comfortable because the leaders of the church, either ministers, pastors, elders, or other affiliates in the church, are not talking about it because they're having their own intimacy problems.
So, all right. So here's the thing. The whole concept is that for some ALB reason, we have gotten this mindset that there is something false about sex, right? And we feel that sex and intimacy are two different entities. We feel that intimacy is more loving, it's of God, and sex is more of the devil.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? And it's that's not the case. To a certain extent, that you have certain leaders that withhold information as far as sharing, but behind the scene, they freaky.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So then now the whole concept is that, okay, why is it that we feel that we are not able to talk about this conversation, even in an intimate into an intimate scenario where we're in men's ministry, where you can share that information, but then now a lot of times, because the church is considered to be ran by what? Men as leaders, you know what I mean, as the house band, the leaders of the church, we don't know how to, in a sense, kind of teach, because there's a lot of emotional base behind the scene, how to give that birds and the bees, how to be to the point that even I can teach a little child about sex without being it too personal. I remember one time that when we was in church, they was talking about sex, and then they were saying like you have to have a certain age to teach your children. I turned to my wife like, well, hey, you got to get on it, and she's like, you're too late. I've been teaching my child since they were 2, and then when they get older, I teach them a little bit more, and so forth and so on. And I'm saying to myself, I'm thinking maybe 10, 12, and she was like, by that time, they're already enough information. Exactly. So as far as leaders, the men, they are not properly trained on how to share that kind of sensitive information without even being vulgar, raw, or nitty gritty, but more in a point that is well receptive.
A lot of people feel like sex is dirty, and we carry that, especially in the church, they carry that idea that sex is dirty. So because sex is dirty, we're not going to talk about the sexual nature, the positions that you should be able to do in bed with your wife or your husband, not even talking sex talk, or where do you go to learn how to do those things? We don't talk about that, but we talk about loving our wife and treating our wife nice and stuff like that. But no one talks about the things that, tends to in some ways hold you together. You know what I'm saying? So that's where the disconnect again is, especially with church leaders. They don't want to touch on topics that are taboo because they don't know what's being told in your household. So they don't want to cross barriers. But at the same time, they come into the pastor saying, we're not compatible sexually. How do we fix this? You get what I'm saying? So we got to find something in order to place it in the church where it can be open but respectful.
Yes.
You know?
And you know, so funny, when in reading and doing research about this, I also realized that some of the information that I read, that when you're doing marital counseling, they covered about the foundation of how you're supposed to treat your wife, your husband, and everything else. And they don't even talk about this, the intimacy part of it.
No.
I mean, I think even if you go into, you know, they have something out here, the love languages. Even
Yes.
if you go into learning about the love language and learn the love language of your spouse, I
Right.
think that's even a start.
Exactly.
Very much so.
Start there, learn
Yeah.
your love language, and then be able to grow from there. Because it's not always just going into having sex.
Mhm.
You know, there's other areas that can satisfy your spouse.
Yes.
So I'm
yes.
going to go into that now. So
Oh
this-
yeah, that's one of our favorite things to talk about. The 5 love languages.
Oh, okay.
yes. So the 5
Harder.
love languages.
Yes.
What would you give our viewers of how to really just go into understanding the 5 love languages and how to start that intimacy in the 5 love languages?
Okay.
Hmm.
Go ahead.
There you go. Okay. So one of the things is that we have to understand that our spouse are not giving a manual. I'm not giving a manual of my wife on how to treat her and how to caress her and these things, right? So one of the things is my job is to research how to take care of this specimen, right? That is my job. My job is to figure out what is to be done. Because if you think about it, in anything that we do, whether it's building something, whether it's on a computer, you have to learn the manual. And in order to learn what you're working with, you have to read and everything. And even though men sometimes don't like to read manuals, you know what I mean? It's very imperative. So when we do that and find out what those things are, we are able to trigger certain things, you know what I mean, in their nerve system, in their emotion system, right? Because then I realized that there's certain things I did for my wife, and she's like, okay, that's nice. I like that. But then now when I hit that spot,
Hey.
that she likes, then it was like the whole world opened up.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because then one of the things that I realized is that because she likes gifts, you know what I mean? And even the smallest thing, whether it's Raisinets, because that's her favorite thing, I'm just gonna give her Raisinette. Her eyes just open like, oh my gosh, thank you. You think that's like, it's just Raisinets. You know what I mean? But if you think about that, that is the beginning of intimacy. Because then now we do not know psychologically where her mind goes by just that presentation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are the key things if you're trying to unlock.
Yo, boy. Yeah.
Guess what? Now you got to pick up some Raisinets.
But I also, you know, people ask where to go for this, right? And even with Fire and Ice, that's what we're starting with, love languages, because not just for your spouse, you need to know that for yourself. And for those who have been married or been together for a very long time, what you liked at age 18 don't mean that's the same love language you're using at 40. You learn, you know? So these are the things. And what I would say is go Google love language test. Basic, you don't have to pay nothing, but you get your answer right there by just answering truthfully, which no one is going to watch you answer. You know, and you get your answers from there, which is your love language, the first and the secondary.
So I'm going to go right into a commercial break because we're going to dive into something even better when we come back.
All right.
So we're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
We know that God has called you to a mission, but sometimes you need a little help getting there. At the Center for Clergy and Church Support, we strive to encourage, empower, and equip ministries and nonprofit organizations to do all that God has called them to do. We handle basic legal issues, conduct administrative and financial audits, and strengthen organizations in community engagement and capacity building. Let us help your ministry or nonprofit in advancing the kingdom of God. Visit clergycenter.org for more information.
Thank you again for watching The Big E, the elephant in the room. My name is Melissa. Today we are talking about sex, and we have 2 wonderful guests. We have Dr. Kia Fisher and her husband, Wagner Fisher. They have really been diving in about intimacy and how we can really connect with our love language. What are the love languages? If you can just tell our viewers.
So you have time, you have touch, you have acts of service, you have gifts, and you have affirmations.
Mhm.
Those are the 5 main love languages. I'm sure a philosopher will come and add some more, but right now it's 5.
So I'm going to go into this, and this is we're getting into a little bit more deeper now.
Mhm.
So a lot of people, they have other different ways to show intimacy to their spouse. So do you think sex toys are a sin?
No, it's not. I mean, why would anyone think that sex toys are is a sin? First of all, I think the question should be, what is sin? You know, because at the end of the day, if we're using something that will stimulate what we're doing in the bed, and my aunt used to say to me, God rest her soul, whatever happens in the married bed stays in the married bed, and consensual to adults who love each other. Sex toys are supposed to enhance the lovemaking. It's not something that takes place of it, you know? So I don't see it as something where it's a sin. What do you think?
Man. Okay, so let's be honest. When we're speaking about religion, a lot of it comes off belief, right? Your belief as to what you believe that what it is, right? Not only that, your dependency is on an individual interpretation of what the Bible states. So then now, if this person said this is what it means, and you're not doing your own personal research, if that is true, then you tend to believe the person rather than what the book says. So then now let's put it this other way. When we think about sex, if you look at the Bible don't speak a lot about sex. The only thing that we kind of talk about is, well, the Lord said, be fruitful and what? Multiply. That's the first thing that we talk about. And then not only that, when the Bible kind of initiate kind of sex is when they talk about marriage. You know what I mean? Once 2 came together, oh, they must have had sex. Because if you look at television, right, back in the days, you know what I mean, they slept in different beds.
Different beds,
you know, they didn't show that. But how did they show?
But they had the Brady Bunch. How did
exactly. You know what I mean?
And
you had all the kids.
That's a setup.
You had all those kids, but you slept on different beds. You know what I mean? Because it was not shown. So then now, when we talk about toys and we talk about sex position, the question becomes in their mindset, where did you get that from? The first thing the thought process is going to be porn, because those are the things that are shared, because the church don't talk about porn. The church don't talk about sexual acts and devices and things of that nature. So because of that, it's like, oh, that's off the devil. But then now, here's the thing. If I am striving to figure out my body, you know what I mean, to teach my wife how to take care of this body, don't I have to learn how to do that? Because then now I can't guide her if I don't know.
So Wagner, you did recently just said about porn. Do you think porn is a sin if a couple sits down and watches porn on the weekends or an evening? Do you feel that porn is something that could be actually even also a hindrance to your marriage if you don't have?
So I would say this, you know what I mean? Everything is a balance. You know what I mean? And we're speaking about in a religion base, right?
Yes.
One of the things that I kind of detest what certain religions do is that if it's not to their understanding, it's a complete sin, right? There's no in between, you know what I mean? And we have to realize that God gives us mercy and grace, because we're learning. We're trying to see where we're supposed to be. What works for me may not work for her. You know what I mean? What worked for us may not work for another couple. So then that is not my job to convict you as to what we do. My job is to encourage, and then if you decide you want to take a taste of it, then that's on you. If not, then that's fine. So when it comes to porn, if I am watching porn for whether education-wise, whether stimulation, whether education for me to learn body parts or learn how to do certain moves or whatsoever, then that's my education. You know what I mean? But then now if I'm using it for my full entertainment that is not conducive to our marriage, then now I believe that it's a hindrance. It's almost like drinking. People say that drinking is nothing wrong with drinking, and that's fine. But then guess what? If I excessively drink, then I become, then it becomes an issue. So it's the same concept. So let's not forget that there is a gray area. It's not just black or white. There is something in between that we can, in a sense, kind of work out and say, well, it works for me. It may not work for you, but it works for me.
And some people feel like porno should just be hardcore porn where they're degrading women. There are soft porn there that Kama Sutra, different things that can actually teach you things. So when we say porn, we got to specify as well, because it doesn't necessarily have to be hardcore porn. It can be actual educational soft porn where both of us sitting down like, yeah, babe, I want to try that right there.
Yeah.
You know, because again, fun, because the truth of the matter is, if we don't communicate and we don't learn, you're going to find somewhere to go and learn it, or I'm going to find somewhere and go and learn it.
Because the question is this: if you read the Bible, they don't talk about sex position.
No.
Neither. Whether it's missionary, whatever the case might, no sex position. So then now, how do one decide what is a sex position? Where do we learn that? Where do we receive that from to even know what is a sex position?
Yeah, and even to go further than that, because I've been, when I was part of Adventist Church, which I love, you know, I love my people, you know, but being a women's ministry leader there, a lot of the women did not know a lot of things of how to please their husband. So then I can't be in a room to actually show you. So what do I do with that? As a sex therapist, how do I tell you to learn these things? You get what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, you want to please him. But me telling you do this, it's still, you're not learning by watching. Some people are visual learners, you know? So I believe if you put it, again, from what I said before, if you put it in a context of safe and respectful, I think it will go a long way, especially.
So you're going into the positions now, or do you feel there are any positions that can be possibly a sin? Or is basically it's just between you and that significant other, and whatever you do behind closed doors, that's between you and that and your significant other or spouse?
As long as it's consensual, as long as a married couple, and I have clients with different backgrounds in regards to couples, relationships, polygamy, from all of that. So it's not out there to disrespect anyone, but as long as it's consensual, as long as you're not hurting the person or what have you, you can be able to communicate about what you would like to try, what things you would like to do. And once the other person consents, there's no position that is off limits as long as you comply, as long as you are saying yes to it. Growing up, I always heard about anal sex, and they equaled it to bestiality. That is not bestiality. Bestiality is with animals. That's totally different. Now you can say anal sex is for exiting, not entrance. That's your preference. But someone else may not feel that way. May feel it's just like oral sex. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, you have people who are of the Catholic Church who feel like procreation, sex is only for procreation. So they're not doing all of that. They're just doing missionary style, and they're
missionary,
good.
And that's it.
Yeah, and that's it.
That's
again, it goes by. It goes by. And in that, because my husband talked about, you know, as far as the man's place, you know, a man's place with women. If we know our bodies, and women know, many of us hardly reach orgasm. Right? We have to do certain positions in order to get there. Sometimes some of us need that. How do you know that if you don't try? But instead, you rather not be pleased. Your husband be pleased, and you just be miserable. And these things that mess up relationships. You know? So
that's it. So we're going to go into that now. Orgasms and masturbation. What is your thoughts on that? Is that considered? Well, let's go into first. Let's talk about the masturbation side of it. You know, they say in the church, you know, we're not allowed to, you know, you can't masturbate. Men shouldn't masturbate. Women shouldn't masturbate. It's considered a sin. So what is your thoughts on that?
Why is it considered a sin? Who said it was a sin?
That's what I've always heard.
When you go to the gynecologist and they're going all in your nice little private parts, is that a sin?
No.
Okay. My thing is, like my husband said, a lot of people have convictions about things, and they make it so that other people can see their point of view, and then it's law. Or then it's perceived to be this, so then that's what it must be. There's no way a woman, especially us women who who have orgasms due to finding out where our G-spot is. How do we know where our G-spot is if we don't do none of these things? You know what I'm
So
saying?
Dr. Fisher, I need you to go into that now. Please go into your G spots. I need you to go into that too, because that is something I think across the board, we don't know all of our G spots.
No. And the
And
crazy
we have to realize also, intercourse is not the only way to be satisfied
correct.
intimately with your spouse.
Correct.
So,
Correct. There are different ways to be intimate, but the whole point of, let's say, sex is for both to have an orgasm. That's the end goal. If my husband only has an orgasm and I don't, then we need to figure out what is it that I need to do in order to reach climax, right? So G-spot, a woman should always be able to know how to guide. To be honest, some G-spots are closer to the anus. Some G-spots are not. Some people just need oral sex and they're fine because that will send them to where they need to go. These are the things why I say masturbation and exploration of your body is important. I feel, to be honest, a lot of these rules were made by men because of the fact that they decided that they wanted to be satisfied and the woman was just there to use to satisfy them. So there was no play for women. This is why I feel like we need to focus on, our bodies and our own convictions in regards to this. So,
do you have any insight on that?
G-spot.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. For us as men, I keep saying it, our goal is to satisfy our wives. You know what I mean? That is our goal. Yes, we do have a selfish nature where it's like, I get mine, I'm good, you got to get yours, right?
Yeah.
But then now, when we are considering ourselves to be a husband and pleasing, we want to get to that element, to that elevation, that climax, you know what I mean? And we both can penetrate at the same time, right? So then now for me is, I have to ask her, what am I doing? What am I not doing? Because in my mind, I'm like, yo, I'm not pleasing my wife. No, I'm good. Like, nah, I need to know what I need to do to please you. For her, it might be oral. So I gotta do my part as a man to do that. Now, some people say like, oh no, that's not of God. Well, who's to say? If my job above anything is to make sure that this woman stays with me and is pleased, then that is my job for me to do. And I'm gonna do it to the best of my ability.
So, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, our time has run out. But we have so much more to talk about this topic, and the Big E definitely will be chiming back into talking about sex. So, but in the meantime, we thank you, everyone that has been tuning in, all of our viewers and our supporters, for watching the Big E, the Elephant in the Room. We thank you, Dr. Kia Fisher and Wagner Fisher, for bringing some great insights to talk about sex. And like we always say, thank you for watching the Big E, the Elephant in the Room, where we speak about the unspeakable.
Yay. Thank you so much for having us.